Hey everyone, so today I am going to be talking about something that resonates with me greatly, and that is going to be on the topic of youth. And before I even begin the introduction of this video, or even like discussing what are different things or ideas that I want to be talking about, I do want to share something that's really important to me, and that is going to be my tattoo. So this is the only tattoo that I have on my body, and it is going to be this right here. Just regular typeface that says youth, right? Nothing crazy, nothing too special. And I would say the reason why I got this tattoo, it was really symbolic for many different reasons. Let me backtrack a bit, right? So I got this tattoo back in 2018. So that was approximately 7 years ago, and I was at the age of 24, and I could recall wanting to get this tattoo to kind of just commemorate my life at that time, because I could recall struggling a lot with my mental health, as well as just dealing with so much and making really poor and irrational decisions. And despite it all, I just wanted to remind myself that even though life is challenging, life was a struggle, I was able to get past it. And so that way, looking at this tattoo was just something that I could always reflect on and remember what my life was like in my early 20s, right? As well as any other time prior to that as well. In addition to that, this tattoo is really symbolic as well, because it kind of functions as like a timer, right? Like the thing about tattoos is that they fade over time, right? And I had essentially gotten something that is permanent on my body that would kind of just over time get blurry, would no longer be clear, coherent anymore. And that was one of the many different purposes of getting this tattoo, right? Like it was essentially a timer for myself as well as my youth, right? I figured like the day that this tattoo completely goes blurry or is no longer legible, that's when my youth would be gone. And crazy enough, I am now 31 years old, right? And I could still see the tattoo perfectly fine. I could recall when I had initially gotten the tattoo when I was 24. I was anticipating that by the time I'm in my late 20s or even turning 30, the tattoo would no longer be very clear, or I couldn't really make out what it said or what other people could possibly interpret it to be, right? But crazy enough, it's still there. It's slowly getting discolored, right? But it's not rapidly happening. And I think that alone is a testament to the idea that I am still very much going through the phases of being young and youthful as well. And with that, I'm now going to be transitioning to the introduction of this video. So with this video, this is actually could be like a stream of consciousness where I get a chance to kind of just talk about my thoughts and feelings on the topic of youth and how it has positive and negative implications for me. I feel like this is something that I've been ideating on for quite some time now, because honestly, a part of me feels like I need to detach myself from my youth and grow past it and become a different person, right? I think I've lived the same life for the past 9 years now, from 2016 up until now. And as much as I love living a very creative life and the things I do, I can also recognize that it also has prevented me from doing a lot of other different things as well, right? I think for me, I attach so much value to the idea of youth and what it means to me that it had me prioritize things in my life much differently than how other people would at my age. And despite the fact that, again, like I had so much fun and had so many amazing experiences, at some point, like it needs to end as well, right? And I need to move on. Whether I will or not, I think that's something I'm still ideating on at the current moment. But this video is kind of just going to be me kind of just talking about what does it mean to be young? What does it mean to be youthful? what are some of the things that I feel that have prevented me from growing and changing as a person as well. And with this video, it's going to be broken up to different parts. So the first part of this video is kind of just me talking about my tattoo and what it symbolizes to me. At the current moment, I'm kind of just like introducing the purpose or my rationale as to why I'm even talking about this. From there, we'll be transitioning to talking about experiencing milestones at a much later time in my life. From there, we'll be going into talking about being an adult child, as well as my interest and involvement in subcultures, which makes me inherently young. And then the last thing I do want to talk about is differentiating the difference between being young in the context of age and then being youthful as well, right? And with that, I would like to start talking about these milestones that I am experiencing at a much later time in my life. And I think maybe the reason why I still live the life I currently live, so carefree, so quote unquote youthful, is because I didn't really get a chance to experience life until a much later time in my life, right? And what I mean by that is, I would say for many people, like, milestones in their lives are experienced at very specific moments, right? Like moving out from your home to having your first relationship, experiencing grief for the first time, all these different things. I felt like I didn't really, it's not I felt, it's a known fact, right? And I think I could just get started, right? Where for me, I didn't even get the chance to leave my home that I was living with my dad and sister for 2 decades, up until the age of 27 or 28. I can't think or recall the specific year when I moved out for the first time at the moment, right? But that was around the same time, like my late 20s was when I had moved out. And through that, like, I could recall having to learn and navigate so much that I never had to do before, right? Like paying bills, budgeting my money for rent, what else? Like just caring for yourself, right? Like doing all these different things, getting groceries, buying stuff, essentials for the house, all these different things, right? Like leading up to my late 20s, like that's not a responsibility I ever had. And I was kind of just had to just do it. I was fortunate enough where I, at the time, had moved out with my ex, and they were really supportive and patient, and they taught me a lot and guided me through that very like pivotal transitional period of my life, from living at home to just being by myself, or like living on my own elsewhere rather. And I could recall wanting to move away from home the moment I had turned 18 and graduated high school, right? But I wasn't given that opportunity just because I needed to stay home to support my family. At the time, I was living under Section 8 housing, right? So families or people who are low income, who get like a stipend through the government services, and they basically get like a reduced amount on rent. And had I left home or moved away and gone elsewhere, that would have meant that my family would need to move and go elsewhere. Where that would be, who knows, right? But it creates a dynamic of a lack of stability in having a home for 3 people. And for that reason, like, it was an expectation, and it was essentially just an expectation for me to stay home until my younger sister was going to graduate college. And that took quite some time as well. So for me, like, I could recall just being very sheltered, having my parents doing a lot for me, right? Like all these different things. And I don't know, I just felt like as a result of that, as a result of like moving out at such a late time in my life, it made me really insecure as well, just because I felt like I lack a lot of knowledge and experience about many different things. And I could talk more about that too when I am discussing why I associate myself with the idea of being an adult child. But moving on from that particular milestone that I had experienced at a much later time in my life, another one that's quite significant, that is like at this point, like I'm just being completely transparent and honest with myself as I'm just like doing this recording, right, and just talking about things. I didn't lose my virginity up until the age of 25, right? So that was like another milestone I experienced at a much like later time, later moment, wherever the case may be. And the reason why was just because of many different reasons. The big one was just having so many insecurities and body dysmorphia, where I just felt so repulsive towards myself and my body, where I was under the impression that no one would want to have sex with me, right? But in addition to that, at that time, like in my early 20s, like just for the context, I am gay, right? And it took me a really long time to be comfortable with the fact that being gay is my identity and what my sexuality is. But for the longest time, I really hated the idea of being gay. I genuinely wished to be straight and just get a chance to just be normal, right? So I had a lot of resentment towards myself in relation to my sexuality. And I just felt like, again, like that experience, that milestone happened at such late time in my life, where I'm seeing this pattern and this reoccurring trend where it's like, oh, these things are happening at a much later time for me and my life. And I think because of that, it also stunts my growth, as well as me transitioning into becoming an adult as well, right? And I think that's like something that I've been ideating on a lot for quite some time now, where I am now 31, but despite my age, I don't feel like I'm an adult yet, or I have my stuff together, right? Like my life. And I don't know, like maybe it's because these milestones I'm experiencing are occurring at such different moments in my life, when these things normally happen to people like in high school, early 20s, right? Like the next one I'm gonna be talking about, the milestone that I didn't get the chance to experience until my late 20s, was my first long-term relationship, right? That relationship was, I believe, like 2 years, and it eventually ended in a separation. And something I want to acknowledge and mention is, I think when people date and have many different relationships, that gives them an opportunity to change and grow in so many different ways, right? It allows them to reevaluate and assess what they want in a relationship, but also learn about themselves, about what led to these relationships ending in separation, and how can they themselves change and grow as a person, right? But for me, because I have so little experiences with relationships, going to this one as my first one in my late 20s, I had so many insecurities and did so many things that I didn't realize I shouldn't have done. And as a, like, I think the best way to phrase it, and this is a recurring like pattern too between this first relationship and my most recent one, is I'm an avoidant attachment style person, and I fear emotional intimacy greatly. I have a really hard time talking about it with my partners in the past, but including like platonic like friendships as well, right? And I think, like, you know, had I had been in experiences, or had I had more experiences with relationships at a much earlier age, you know, like I would feel more comfortable and confident and having a better idea of like how to be a partner and to show up as a partner, among other different things, right? Now, with my first relationship as well, with that ending, I didn't even get a chance to grieve it, because my most recent ex appeared in my life, and it kind of just, everything happened so fast where like we got reconnected, and now we're like spending so much time together, and that led us to pursuing a relationship, right? And because of him, and him just being a part of my life at that moment and helping me go through my first heartbreak, right? So that's the other thing too, right? That was my first relationship, but also my first heartbreak. But because my ex was there, my most recent one, he helped supported me through that heartbreak. But I felt like I didn't really get the chance to grieve the ending of that relationship, or even to reflect on why that relationship ended at that time, right? I maybe had ideated on it, but I don't think I generally reflected on it and then took those lessons and then made sure that going into my new relationship, I wouldn't be doing the same things. Because the unfortunate reality of the situation was both relationships essentially ended up the same way, right? Where these partners told me like, hey, like, you're very cold and I can't tell whether or not you love me or not. And you kind of just isolate and kind of just keep yourself from a distance. And that's true. Like, I keep relationships on a surface level because I fear my emotions so much. And connecting this back to this idea of like experiencing milestones, right? Where it's like, I didn't experience grief for the first time until the age of 31, which had happened the ending of 2024 when my ex initiated the ending of our relationship, right? And for the past few months now, I've been having to learn and grow and change and essentially just like reevaluate myself and my life and just figure out like what is wrong with me and how can I change to become a better person, right? Through the grief I was experiencing and reflecting on the ending of my relationship. And it's unfortunate that this is happening at the age of 31, right? Again, I think a lot of people experience this at a much younger age or a much earlier time in their lives. But for me, right, it's just this reoccurring thing where it's like these milestones are happening at a much slower pace for me. And I have no control over it. I think for quite some time, I blamed myself for it, for being this naive, young, like foolish, ignorant person. But on the other hand, it's like, I also recognize and give grace to myself, knowing that the circumstances of my life wasn't what I got the chance to choose, right? I didn't choose to grow up poor. I didn't choose to be gay, right? It was just like these things that was kind of just like the luck of the draw, right? And I can recognize now where it's like, you know, like despite having these experiences at such a later time in my life, like it's just a part of living, right? And maybe I could be more compassionate to myself, knowing that, you know, like it makes sense why this is happening to me, why these experiences are happening at such a later time in my life, and all these lessons that I'm going through and experiencing and learning, right? It's just, there's nothing I could have done differently. It was just how my life was just kind of like outlined to be. With that, I want to transition to the next topic now, which is going to be on the idea of being an adult child, right? I feel like this is an insecurity I have for a really long time now. And I can remember expressing this to my ex many times. And they were always very loving and reassuring and telling me, you know, like how proud I am, how proud they were of me in the growth they saw. But I do believe that unfortunately, like the growth stagnated and I kind of just became complacent. And that led into affecting the relationship as well, right? And it's essentially just like this idea that for me, there's many reasons why I associate and attach myself to being an adult child. One is just financial literacy. I feel like I'm so careless with my money. I'm fortunate enough where I've had careers now, right? My first career was, I guess another thing to talk about too. So I'm gonna hold off on talking about being an adult child, right? Because I think there are some other things I want to talk about in terms of like milestones that happen at such a later time in my life. I didn't start my career until I had turned 26, my first career, right? Prior to that, I just had jobs, getting paid minimum wage. And my first career was working as a high school English teacher. And I felt like for most people, right, like typically people would graduate college anywhere from the age of 21 and 22, and they'll get their career started in their early 20s. But for me, that ended up happening in my mid 20s. So I felt like, with like starting my career at such a later time in my life, as well as still living at home, among other different things, I just never really learned financial literacy, right? I never felt the need at the time to like learn how to be responsible with my money. But the other thing too that I'm thinking about now as I'm talking about is I've been in school until the age of 25, right? Which meant from preschool up until my mid 20s, that's like, I would imagine like 2 decades of schooling, right? And I think because I live a significant amount of my life as a student, I never felt compelled or the necessity or the pressure to grow to become an adult, right? It makes sense now as I'm like talking about this, where it's like, yeah, because I was in school for so long, right? Like I eventually after undergrad, I had to go to grad school to get my teaching credential. That ended up taking additional time as well, right? And it's just like, yeah, like for me, like as a student, I had that mindset of like, I have no responsibilities other than needing to finish school and to be studying. I'm gonna have some water real quick. It was just like, yeah, like I didn't have to financially support my family. It was more just like I needed to live there so that way we were able to have that like service provided to us with like cheap housing, right? So for me, like the idea of just like saving money wasn't ever something that crossed my mind because growing up poor, I didn't have much at all. So I felt like I just wanted to buy anything and everything I could possibly get for myself that I wanted and just live up life. But yeah, like even career related stuff, I feel like it happened so late in my life too, where I felt like, maybe had I graduated college earlier and started a career, like all these feelings or like experiences or just the thoughts of like not being an adult quite yet wouldn't exist. And I would be at that point in my life now where I kind of just am at peace with myself. And I think that's a big part of why I'm even talking about this. Like, I feel like all my life, I haven't experienced true peace. There's always something I'm stressed about or depressed about or some other thing, right? And I feel like, to me, being an adult means just finding, like, having to experience conflict. Excuse me, sorry about that. I don't know, I think it's just being an adult to me means having peace with yourself. And there's less things to stress about, less things to be concerned about, and so many other things. So with that, I'm gonna go back on talking about being an adult child, right? I think for me, like, I think no one wants to hear or be told that they are an adult child, but it's something that I generally feel is a big part of me at the current moment, and it's something that I'm working towards changing. And I do feel like that change has began these past few months. A big one is just like financial literacy, right? Like I briefly talked about this, and it's just like, I'm so careless with my money. I'm just buying stuff. And it's just all, it's more complex than just that, right? Like me not spending, or me spending too much money, or like buying stuff that I don't really need and not like saving it or like investing it or anything like that. It's like, it's complex because my spending habits are also very much deeply rooted to my traumas, as well as just my mental health, right? Like whenever I buy a new blind box, a collectible, or if I'm going to round one and playing the claw machines, right? Like that gives me like a hit of serotonin that brings me joy. And I think that's a big part of why I was spending money so carelessly as well. It's because I didn't really have a good idea of approaching my mental health. So I was using my money as a way to kind of just help me get through like moments in my life that were affecting me mentally. And I think something I need to change about myself and grow and move on from that is just being mindful of just my spending habits and just actually learning how to budget, right? I think when I moved out for the first time, that did led me to budgeting my money efficiently at first. And then I kind of fell back into old habits, and then budgeting no longer became a thing, right? I think that was something that I should have learned at that time in my late 20s when I had finally moved out, but that ended up being the case at all, right? But again, like I think now that I'm more self-aware about money and how I go about spending it, it's something that I would hope that I'm able to change moving forward. In addition to that, right, I feel like an adult child is also very insecure, right? And through their insecurity, that ends up affecting their actions, choices, decisions, feelings, and so many other different things. I think my insecurities affected my ex for sure, right? And I think my insecurities led me to having no confidence in myself, in my potential. I think the idea of having a career as an artist was something that I had always wanted to have for myself, but it wasn't something I pursued because I felt like I wasn't good enough, or I just didn't have the potential or the skills. But now that I'm at this current age and seeing what I'm able to make and all these things in relation to visual arts that I taught myself, right? Like photography, design, 3D modeling, currently teaching myself how to draw, and seeing how much I've grown in these skills reassures and validates me that these insecurities I attached to myself were not real, right? And it's unfortunate that because of them, I felt like I kind of just postponed my life. And I think moving forward, like I want more confidence in myself and to be able to make art into a potential career one day. I'm working towards that now. I really want to get to that point. Whether or not I get there, I don't know, but I am generally ready to put in the effort, because I feel like throughout my entire 20s, right, like I decided to become a high school English teacher for many different reasons, but I always knew it was short term. But looking back, I kind of wish I had pursued something more creative, right? Where if I was, say for example, I remember wanting to major in graphic design in my freshman year of high school. Not freshman year of high school, freshman year of college. And after taking like one prerequisite course, I decided, this is not for me, because I just didn't feel comfortable or confident in my skills. So I talked myself out of it. But had I stuck with that and gave myself a chance, I would be an amazing designer at the current moment at the age of 31, without a doubt. But because of my insecurities, I'm currently on a different path in my life now in relation to my career and the point I am with this passion for making art, right? And I think an adult child is someone that holds these insecurities so close to themselves. And I think an adult is able to overcome those feelings, and not allow it to kind of just dictate their lives, right? Other things in relation to the idea of being an adult child, I think a big one as well is just what I prioritize in my life, right? I think I just focus so much on going out and having a great time, spending every moment with friends, having these experiences, going to shows, going to events, whether they're like underground raves or like art shows, all these different things, right? I feel like I am just in this mode of just going out all the time and socializing and being very extroverted. But it's like, you know, at some point I need to sit down and reflect and think about like, well, are there other things that I want to focus my time on and kind of just prioritize more? And I think what I'm trying to say is I think I'm at the point where I feel like I feel stuck. I feel like I'm in a routine, doing the same thing every day since 2016, right? I think being a part of this creative scene, community, this life I live, I've been doing it since 2016, which is almost more than a decade, or getting to a decade, right? And I think, you know, like I'm 31 now, like maybe it's time to do these things in moderation, or even just maybe just detach myself from it completely, right? I think at some point, like you exhaust every experience you could possibly have. And at that point, like you don't grow or change or learn anymore, right? I think I generally feel as if I got every experience and every lesson I could possibly want, living the life I've had, being very youthful, you know, all these different things rather. But yeah, I just think I'm at a point where I'm like thinking now where it's like, it is maybe time to move on, right? And I think with the studio, the likeliness of this being my last year here is highly probable. This upcoming September would be my 5th year at the art studio. And I feel like, you know, like I've done it all. I've done everything here I possibly can. I think there is a new opportunity and a new experience for me elsewhere. And it's gonna be hard to leave, right? But I think it's something that I need to do. Like, it's like at the bottom of my heart, like this gut feeling where I'm just like, you know, as much as I love the studio and just being here, making art, being with friends, connecting with people, having a good time, good laughs, right? It's like, it's holding me back, right? And I also feel that way about the Bay Area too, right? I lived here all my life, lived the majority of my life in San Jose, and in all the places I've moved after, had always been in the South Bay. And I think the idea of like moving to a new state, a new city, somewhere else would be refreshing. And maybe that's the experience I need that will allow me to kind of just also change and grow as a person as well, right? I think at this point I'm kind of just rambling on and kind of just like pivoting to different ideas and topics, but I just want to reassure you that these are all interconnected, everything's very threaded, and they're all just so closely related to one another, right? Anything else on the topic of an adult child? No, it goes back to like the milestones too, right? Where I think because I've experienced so many milestones at such a late time in my life, I feel as if I'm still an adult child and I haven't had a chance to transition to being an adult yet. With that, I'm going to be transitioning on to the next topic, which are going to be my interest and involvement in subculture, which also makes me inherently young as well, right? I feel like, where do I want to start with this? Like, I guess because I'm gay, and also because I am a creative and artist, I never really aligned myself to like social norms or expectations. I always kind of just had always been an outlier, right? I could recall that being the case when I was in high school, Like my interests were different, what my goals are or my dreams were always different as well. And leading up to college and studying English in my undergrad years, I remember reading a lot of literature that was written about the beatniks. And the beatniks were the subculture of people who are hippies from the 60s, right? And there was just so many stories, whether it was fiction or nonfiction, biographies, all these different things, documenting and talking about their lives and how carefree it was and how fluid and just like it didn't meet or align with what the social expectations were. And at that time, in my early 20s, that resonated with me so much where I genuinely wanted to have that experience for myself as well. And that was something I was searching for a really long time. And it wasn't until when I was 26, right? Coincidentally, the same time when I got my first career, right? Among other different things. I felt like 26 is a significant moment for me because that was literally my first time experiencing life, right? Prior to that, I was very sheltered, didn't really have many options, was still a student, kind of just living life as if I was just, I don't know, like a teenager, I guess? Like, I don't know, I just felt like, it wasn't until I was 26 when I felt like, okay, I feel like an adult now in some capacity, right? But yeah, like, to talk about or continuing on with this idea of like subcultures, I generally feel like I'm a part of one at the current moment. There isn't a name that comes to my mind to kind of like label the subculture, but it's something that organically developed over time, right? Me getting connected to all these different people, all these different artists, and seeing our passions kind of just align perfectly with one another, seeing the type of art we are making, the life that we live, the things we do, right? Like going to like these DIY underground shows, to being very passionate about like fashion, whether it's like Japanese designer stuff or archive, vintage, all these other different things. And then there's also just like the big interest with like toys and collectibles, as well as like Japanese pop culture in relation to like anime and manga. And then the art we make as well is just, it's not corporate. It's also not what most people are making. If anything, it's like very unique in itself, very innovative, in my opinion, right? It's just like art that isn't sellable or isn't commercial, corporate, right? It's just like art that expresses the authenticity of a person and who they are and what they're trying to convey, right? And I think the thing about subcultures and why I want to talk about this in the context of youth is subcultures is essentially a group of people, typically young people, who are living an alternative lifestyle, right? Having a different experience than what most people are having. And I'm so happy and grateful to have this experience, right? And I think it was something I had wanted to manifest for myself for so long because I had always attached so much value to the idea of rebellion or just being yourself, being authentic to who you are, and just, yeah, I feel like, I guess what I'm trying to say, right, is like this idea that subcultures is the voice of the youth. And many subcultures can coexist at the same time. Coincidentally, this just happens to be the one that I'm a part of. And I feel like that voice conveys so much, right? It shows resilience, it shows passion, it shows culture, it shows youthfulness, it shows innovation, it shows so much, right? All of these things conveyed through one voice, but as a result of many different things filtering into that voice. And I feel like maybe a big part of why I still feel so youthful and young is because I'm still living and being a part of the subculture as well, right? And on one hand, like at some point, I will need to grow up and go beyond this community and these people and these friends, right? Like, as much as I love them, and I can generally look back one day and reflect on all the amazing experiences I had in my life, but also deep down, I also know and feel as if at some point, like, I need to move on as well, right? And to grow and change and to be a different person. I think because I've been a part of this lifestyle for the past 9 years now, I feel like it's feeling redundant, feeling repetitive, feeling stagnant. A part of me feels complacent because it just feels like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. Despite the fact that I enjoy and love it, it also is an indicator that I'm stuck, right? So like this subculture I'm a part of, who knows how long I'm gonna be here for, right? A part of this lifestyle, a part of these group of friends, these experiences. I feel like for sure the ending is coming soon, but I also know that I'm not quite ready to leave yet until I fully document everything, whether through video work, photography, art, like visual media, some sort, I don't know, right? I think I know that it's time to go soon, but I want to spend my remaining time here, a part of this subculture, documenting as much as I can, so that one day I can work on projects, right? Like I think I can see myself like, let me backtrack. So I was really passionate with creative writing. I really love writing fiction, and short stories specifically as well. And I was a writer that pulled and referenced so many of my personal experiences or the things I observed in life. And I would be hopeful and would like to believe that one day when I'm much older, right, like maybe in my 40s, I could spend time writing narratives and stories about this experience I had going through living this life I had been going through, a part of this culture, subculture specifically, right? I think I want to get the opportunity to kind of just document that and share that with people. And whether or not people read it or not, like, who knows, who cares, right? But I don't know, I generally am so grateful for what I've had the chance to experience. And, you know, like, if I was so focused on growing up so fast and being an adult at this age, I wouldn't have the chance to experience this. On one hand, I wish I got the chance to experience this when I was much younger, right? In my early 20s, or even when I was 18. But again, it happened at a much later time in my life, out of my control. I'm just grateful that it even happened at all. And with that, I'm gonna be transitioning, let me say that again. I'm gonna be transitioning to the next and final topic for this video. And that's gonna be differentiating the difference between being young in the context of age and being youthful as well. So everything I'm talking about at the current moment, I've been sharing it with my therapist as well. I have been reflecting a lot and thinking critically about these feelings, these thoughts, these emotions, like all this stuff. And something that my therapist wanted to remind me is to be compassionate to myself. I feel like I'm blaming myself for so many different things, for why my life is the way it is, why things had gone wrong the past 2 years, right? Like, I think I keep blaming myself, right? Thinking that, you know, like, maybe if I was an adult, I wasn't still an adult child, I wouldn't be experiencing these struggles, these conflicts, these issues in my life. But on the other hand, it's like, I wouldn't have been able to grow and change until these things happen in my life. And it's unfortunate that it happened at a much greater or later time in my life, but at least it happened and I can move on from there, right? And I think Being 31 right now is interesting. I used to fear the idea of growing old. Like I can remember in my early 20s hating and resenting growing up so much. Every year, whenever my birthday comes by, I just felt so much frustration. And for the longest time, like I didn't really celebrate my birthday at all either, because I felt like, like why do I want to celebrate growing older, right? And that hasn't been the case for the past few years now. Like for the past few years, I've been celebrating my birthday with my friends, and it's been so much fun. I remember last year, I ended up like hosting a kind of like a picnic party with like an emphasis on playing kickball with my friends. That was really fun. And that's like this idea of like being youthful too, right? Like for my 31st birthday, I played kickball with so many different people, versus me doing something completely different. And I think that idea connects back to what I'm trying to say, where it's like your age and your youthfulness are two different things that don't need to be associated with each other, right? Your age is just how old you are, but your youthfulness, at least for me specifically, I feel like it's a part of me. It's my personality. It's who I am and the quality of the person I am. I think looking back to like, I've always been so youthful for so many different reasons. I never really wanted to grow up. I think that's the reality of the situation. Like, I didn't want to grow up. And because of that, like I always associated myself with stuff that was regarded as too old for myself at that age, right? Like still watching cartoons and anime in high school, or like collecting toys, other different things. Like all these things had negative connotations at one point. They're all very much normal now, right? But I was doing these things when people regarded it as something that you should be only be doing when you were much younger, right? But I think something I want to say, right, is like, as I get older, I would hope that my youth isn't something I abandon, and it isn't something that I detach myself from, right? I can recognize and be self-aware and know that I'm aging and I'm growing in that capacity. And I'm hopeful that with each year, I change and become a better and a different person. But that doesn't mean that I need to abandon my youth. I don't need to toss it aside or believe that it's what is preventing me from growing or changing. Being youthful is just something that, what does being youthful mean to me? On one hand, being youthful means living carefree, doing what I love, being authentic to myself, right? And I think those are values I generally cherish. And like the toy collecting, this like obsession with anime, playing video games, going out with friends, like all this stuff, like having these experiences, just living carefree, making memories with people, right? On one hand, being an adult can mean just staying at home, going to work and then doing your chores or whatever responsibilities you have. But for me, like I live such a carefree life, and I think it all comes down to I just need to do it in moderation rather than having it being like a full-time routine or lifestyle, right? And that's it. Like being an adult means doing things in moderation, but it also doesn't mean that you need to eliminate the things you love or forgetting who you are as a person, right? You don't have to change to conform to society. And that's not something that I ever plan on doing. But for that reason, right, I think I'm gonna just end it with, I will always be a youthful person. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a negative or a positive connotation of any sort. It's just who I am as a person. And through that, I may make poor decisions or decisions that are neutral or positive in some capacity, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like my youth it's not disappearing, even though I thought it was, right? Even though I got this tattoo claiming that one day my youth will be gone, right? That's not the case. It's my age and me growing and getting older. That's what's happening. But my youth will always be there. And I think that's something that I can recognize now. And with that, thank you for getting to the end of the video, and take care, everyone. Goodbye.